This is Martin, and welcome to just a fun little video. This is my personal top 10 best bike inventions of the last 50 years. I'm sure you have your top 10 too, but I thought I'd let everyone know my top 10, and if you're not using some of these things, you might want to consider them. They are truly what I consider the best inventions of the 50 years. So, we're going to start with number 10, and number 1 will be my favorite. Number 10 is bike trailers. These new high-tech bike trailers, well, not new, but for the last 20 years or so at least, these new high-tech bike trailers are an excellent way of touring. These bike trailers allow you to keep the handling of your bike pretty much as normal. So you can tour and not have a bike flexing back and forth, or all the bad handling characteristics that you get when you put panniers on a bike. Trailers actually make touring for the novice a viable alternative. You can tour, and your bike's going to handle about the way it normally handles without a load. So this way you can have a load and not have all the adverse handling effects of the bicycle. Of course, you still have the weight, and you'll have to haul that weight uphill, but that doesn't change any whether you put your baggage on the bike or in a trailer. And of course, a trailer is a nice way of getting groceries too, though I prefer a smaller amount of groceries and using panniers that you can carry into the grocery store with you and then just throw them on the back of the bike and go home. I consider that a little easier than a trailer. But for my number 10, the trailers are the best invention of 50 years. Number 9, suspension forks, or suspension on bikes, especially mountain bikes. And suspension with lockouts. It took a while to get lockouts to come pretty much standard on bikes, but now that they're here, the suspension is viable. Before, without lockouts, it made the mountain bike extremely horrible on the road. It wasn't any fun to ride. So if you're riding to the trails, a lockout on the fork now allows you to get to the trails with much more fun on the road. Nothing worse than having a full suspension bike soaking up all your efforts on the road. So now, like this picture of this Gravity, this one has a lockout on the rear suspension and a lockout on the front. So now we have suspension bikes for off-road and some of them for on-road. Suspension for comfort bikes is normal and practical in some places. But the suspension has made mountain biking much, much more enjoyable. And that is number 9. And number 8 is built-up wheels. It was extremely rare just 20 years ago to find a set of built-up wheels of any kind of quality. Almost all the wheels that were being built up from manufacturers were being machine built or just quickly built by hand, and they just weren't very good at all. You had to have a really good wheel builder build your wheels if you're a serious cyclist. You could not buy stock wheels. But today, for as little as $100, you can get a very strong set of built-up wheels. Now, the hubs on the $100 wheels won't be the smooth-running Continental Super Records that some people are used to, but again, you can spend a little more money, such as like $150 or so, and get maybe a Shimano set of hubs or a cassette bearing set that might roll a little smoother for you. But the main thing is you can buy built-up wheels, and you can spend as much as you want, of course, on those, that are ready to go. They're shipped to you, and they are normally fairly true. Now, my experience on these lower priced wheels are they are not perfectly true, and you will have to immediately put them in a truing stand and fine tune them. But for the new inventions for the last 50 years, it makes my number 8 list. And number 7. Number 7 is disc brakes. Disc brakes was a long time waiting. I bought the first mountain bike back in around 1982 when Ross first made their first production mountain bike. Came with cantilever brakes, and if you were in any kind of muddy kind of conditions, the brakes you would have mud on your rims, and the braking would be just absolutely gritty and horrible. So I waited about 15 years, and finally they started coming out with disc brakes, and what a great improvement. Plus, not only is it cleaner braking service because it doesn't get muddy as easy, but it's also an improved braking. So now we have a braking surface that you can allow to heat up, and you don't have to worry about your rims heating up, and you don't have to worry about your rims wearing through prematurely with all the grit that you've been grinding in there with the braking surface. So disc brakes, and a huge improvement. I love disc brakes. They are now using disc brakes on road bikes too. So for those of you in extremely mountainous areas where you have long descents, you can now safely ride your brakes all the way down. Heat those things up to a boiling point, and you're still going to have brakes. So disc brakes has been just a wonderful addition to bikes, and it makes my number 7 list. Number 6, aero bars. I've been told that aero bars are racing components only, but it depends on how you mount them to your bike and what kind of bike you're mounting them to. I never have mounted aero bars on a road bike. Drop bars have enough positions there where I really don't want it cluttering up my bike. My road bike I have as a minimalized bike. I put at least amount of accessories on it as possible. So the last thing I want is aero bars clogging up the bike or taking up some room on the handlebars. Now they do make aero bars that have flip-up pads which give you all the positions on your road bike drop bars, but I still just don't like them on there. I don't want to add the weight, I don't want to add the clutter. But for flat bar bikes, I have hybrid bikes and adventure bikes. The addition of aero bars is a great second or third or fourth position alternative. When you have a higher mounted bar, such as in a hybrid bike or especially a comfort bikes have very highly mounted bars. When you put an aero bar on these bikes, you are not lowering yourself down into an aero position. You are lowering yourself down to a position equivalent to riding over the brake hoods on road bars. So it's more upright and a very, very comfortable alternative, taking all the weight off your hands. So I'm a big fan of aero bars for touring, for sport riding, and anything with a flat bar. And because it's been such a comfortable way of riding, taking pressure off your shoulders because you get different positions in your shoulders now, since it's such a comfortable alternative, it makes my top 10 list at number 6. And number 5, the new flat protection tires. Flat protection tires that roll as good as any tire out there. These 4 I have here are all Specialized tires. They are all Specialized Armadillo protection layer on them. And all 4 of these tires I use on my bikes. So they've been thoroughly tested over a long period of time, and I've found them to be very flat resistant. I've also found them to be very low rolling resistance. And the tread patterns, such as the tire on the, as you go from the left, it is the all condition tire that I'm using on my road bikes and hybrid bikes. Next to that is the Crossroads tire, which I'm using on my mountain bike. Next to that is the Hemisphere tire, which I'm using on my comfort bike. And next to that is the Infinity, which I am using on my adventure bike. So all these tires are flat protected. They all run very high PSIs for what they are, anywhere from 80 PSI on the Crossroads tire to 125 PSI on a 23 millimeter all-condition tire. The Hemisphere is running a maximum of 60 for a comfort bike, and that's the way you want those. Buy a comfort bike for comfort. But all these tread patterns and all these tires are just absolutely wonderful tires, best in the world. And I've ridden the best tires in the world and raced on the best tires in the world. And after 40 years of riding, I have found these tires to be nothing close to anything on the market like them. So all my bikes use Specialized tires exclusively. Only downside is you can only buy Specialized tires at a Specialized dealer. But these tires are just absolutely wonderful, and they make my top 10 at number 5. Number 4 is basically the Lycra clothing. Before Lycra, there was some limited kind of stretchy fabric that helped quite a bit on cycling, and they had leather chamois. But since the Lycras come out, they've also come out with synthetic chamois, which are much easier to take care of than leather. And what the shorts used to be is maybe a wool with it was a wool with some kind of a stretchy fabric woven in there. But they'd never ever had the kind of fit that Lycra does. Lycra is like a second skin. That way, you don't have any folds in the fabric. You don't have anything wrinkling. So I think Lycra fabrics is what allowed me to race across America without scraping skin off and having to quit the ride. I mean, once you've scraped skin off, it's pretty much over with. It's pretty hard to get the skin to heal. And infection is a major concern after that. So Lycra shorts have made long-distance cycling absolute joy. And along with that is the gel padding that they put in gloves. This gel padding has been a real lifesaver for ultramarathoners too. You can adjust your bike to take all the weight off your hands, but by the time you've done that, you've eliminated a forward weight drop on your legs. So performance-wise, it doesn't give you as flat of a lumbar back. Your lower back is the lumbar region. And the more you tilt your saddle forward, the more possible it is to get in a flat position without putting weight on the sensitive areas of your sitting areas. So with the compromise of a saddle tilt just maybe just slightly above level, You do put a little bit of weight on your hands, but you're also putting weight forward on the cranks. And this gives you a much better performance riding position. So the gel padding is made in the gloves, is made taking the vibrations out of the road and long distance riding, a much more enjoyable thing. So basically, between the shorts and the gloves, the Lycra fabrics make number 4 on my list. And number 3, clipless pedals. These are such a huge advance over toe clips that I would never consider riding toe clips ever again. The clipless pedal makes a solid connection to the bike, gives you all the pedal strokes you need because your feet are well attached. You don't have to tighten down a strap over your feet to get a good attachment. You simply turn up the tension on the pedals and you can be locked in as tight as you want. The alternative to this was toe clips, and I spent my entire life going through toenails because the toe clips fit was so bad. For one, I had to actually build my own extensions on the toe clips because they never made one big enough for my huge size 12 foot. But they never actually made the toe clip tall enough for my foot either. And this little bit of pinching eventually would destroy my big toenail. And I spent the first 20 years of my life going through toenails until I finally bought my first set of Look pedals. And now all my bikes are equipped with SPD pedals. But because this eliminated such a huge problem with toe clips and added such a great way of attaching yourself to the bike, clipless pedals makes number 3 on my list of great inventions. And number 2, no one would believe this, but the plastic water bottle cage is my number 2 favorite invention of the last 50 years. The plastic cages are absolutely clean. You have a plastic bottle in a plastic cage, so you don't really have anything wearing off between the two. It's a great compatibility. And I've never, ever had a bottle come out going over a bad bump with a plastic cage. The plastic cage has held my bottles perfectly for the last 20 years. I'm not sure when I bought my first plastic cage, maybe 15 years ago. But I still have my first plastic cage. You would think it would have cracked and broke by now, being just a plain old plastic cage, but it hasn't. I still have all the cages I've bought for all my bikes. Of course, all 5 bikes have plastic cages on them now, and they are just wonderful. The alternative of the aluminum cage, and why I love this plastic cage so much, is the aluminum would wear off on the bottle. Every time you put a bottle in and out, the aluminum would come off. The aluminum on the cage would come off on the bottle. And by the time I was done with my ride, the bottle was black with aluminum, and of course my hands were black with aluminum from touching the bottle, and anything my hands touched, like my face or anything else, was all black. I put up with this black, ugly aluminum for a long time, and when they came out with the plastic cages, it ended. And what a great joy that was. So that's why this simple little invention makes number 2 on my top 10 list. And now for the number 1, the best bicycle invention in the last 50 years. And it's actually more of a general thing. It's all of the different bikes and styles and materials they're building bikes out of. This wide choice of bikes is my number 1 choice for Best Inventions. It's an incredible time to be a cyclist. Your choice in bicycles is immense, and it's just, for me, it's very enjoyable to be able to buy a bike set up specifically for the kind of riding I want to do with it. I don't have to compromise anything on a bike anymore. I own 5 bikes. I own a road bike, traditional road bike with drop bars, 700C. I own a hybrid with the 700C, and this is a true hybrid because it has a 72-degree head tube angle. There are hybrids out there that are simply racing bikes with a flat bar on them, such as this one. This carbon high-tech Motobacan is a racing frame they've taken the drops off and put a flat bar on. So I don't know what you would call this bike. I don't call it a hybrid because it has a 73-degree racing angle. So this one that I bought is a true hybrid with a 72-degree angle, which is more relaxed. The other another bike I own is what's called adventure bikes. These are probably the newest invention out there. These are 700C bikes that allow for a wide range of tire widths. It also has a suspension fork with a lockout. These bikes use pretty much 29er mountain bike frame or mountain bike technology, except that these are light duty and not intended for heavy duty off-roading. These bikes are intended to be basically on the road or very light trail use or gravel roads. So this is a way of traveling down a nice smooth road with your fork locked out, or turning down that road you wanted to see but couldn't see it before because you didn't want to take it down, you didn't want to take your road bike down there. So this one, you flip the lever, turn on the suspension fork, and head on down the road with your little fatter tires and in a more upright seating position. So these bikes give you a lot of choices in the kind of terrain you can ride, and it makes an excellent choice for as an only bike you may own. That's the third bike I own. The fourth is the traditional 26-inch wheeled hardtail mountain bike with a lockout fork. I ride to the trails, and this bike is fun to ride on the road with the lockout fork, and I get to the trail without even stopping. I flip my fork, I'm in full suspension mode, and I hit the trails. And usually I will stop and take air out of the tires. My tires run anywhere from 25 psi to 80, and for off-roading I'll take them down to about 35. And that's my fourth bike. My fifth bike is a traditional comfort bike with a high upright handlebar and a suspension fork with 26-inch fat tires on there. This bike pictured here, it has the internal gearing. Mine does not, but the hybrid bike gives you a well sit-up position, and it's a very fun way to ride bike trails. So besides these 5 bikes, these 5 bikes actually give me a different riding position every time, and besides being tuned especially to the kind of riding conditions I'm going to be using them for, these different positions really help me from day to day recover from the previous ride. Being in a different position is a great advantage for me to recover from the day's ride before. So besides these 5, there's all kinds of choices out there. Besides we have a high-tech flat bar racing bike here. This is one of my favorites. It's a lightweight, compact framed, disc braked hybrid. This bike, when you live in the mountains, is just a beautiful bike. It has a wide range gearing for those long climbs. It has flat bars to control the descents, and it has disc brakes to control the heat that you may encounter on a long steep downhill with hairpin turns. I have an adventure bike set up just for that. Then we have these very specific bikes, such as this. This is a triathlon bike or time trial bike, just built for time trialing and going as fast as you can without a draft. These bikes are very fast, probably the fastest of any bike because of the aerodynamics. As long as you got a aligned frame, aligned wheels, and good bearing surfaces, aerodynamics become the most important thing on a bike. I use the 18-mile-an-hour rule, which means once you've achieved a strength level where you can maintain an average speed of 18 miles an hour, to go beyond that takes a great deal of strength because you're basically just pushing wind at that point. So any bike that eliminates partial wind resistance, and your body is by far the biggest wind resistance. I mean, they do make aero bikes which might help you a 1/4 mile an hour in wind resistance, and maybe a little more than that if you are a professional riding at 30 miles an hour. At 30 miles an hour, even the brake cables would probably slow you down an eighth to a 1/4 of a mile an hour. So these bikes are very fast, very fun to ride if you like speed. Next, the choices in bikes is that, we didn't have full suspension mountain bikes just maybe 15 years ago. So today's full suspension mountain bikes, and this one pictured here has lockouts on the front and rear, so getting to the trails on the road is still enjoyable. But the full suspension definitely makes off-roading much more fun. Just another one of the many different kinds of bike choices there are today. Next, for the purist, is the single speed. This is a single speed off-road, but of course there's the single speed on-road too, and of course a lot of the on-road single speeds are fixed gears, which people really like. Again, these are very simple bikes, and for the purist who just wants to go out there and never shift and just use the bike as is, these are great bikes to have fun with too. Next is the new crank forward design. As you can see, this crank set where you pedal is moved forward of that seat tube. This forward position gives you a flat foot when properly adjusted. When you are on a traditional bike and it's properly adjusted, there's no way you're going to ever be able to lay a flat foot on the ground when you stop. You're going to be on the very tips of your toes, and the higher the bottom bracket, the higher up you're going to be. So for riding traditional bikes in town with lots of stoplights, it's a real pain. You have to stop, get off your bike, wait, get back on, get back in your pedals if you're using clipless or you're using toe clips, and it becomes a big hassle. These bikes allow you to just stop, put a foot down, stay in your saddle, and it makes a very good city bike. The only downside of these bikes, I have owned a Trek Pure and a Giant Revive, which were both crank forwards. Very fun bikes to ride. Very fun in the city because you can just stop and put your feet down. But unfortunately, when I used these bikes in the extreme in the mountains in a very steep 20% grade dirt road, I injured my knee very badly. The biomechanical position of these crank forward bikes puts your knees in a very bad position. So anybody that aren't genetically endowed with with wonderful joints will have trouble with these when climbing hills. Next is the cyclocross bike, which has been around for quite a while, but today's cyclocross bikes are now being equipped with disc brakes. Another nice feature, and something that we certainly didn't have 10, 20 years ago. Next is there's been just a huge outcrop of cruiser bikes in all kinds of colors and styles. So if you're kind of a stylish person and you want something really different, your choices in cruiser bikes are almost unlimited. There's a huge amount of selection of cruiser bikes. This one I've got pictured here is because it's so unusual. This bike uses 3-inch wide tires, really wide, fun, go across sand and things. The wider your tire is on sand, the better, and these make great beach bikes. Comes with fenders. This one has a 3-speed internally geared transmission, and just lots of fun. Next, we have a whole series of recumbent bikes. This recumbent bike has exploded in the amount of choices you have. Just huge amounts. This one is somewhat of a non-traditional. It's using two 20-inch wheels front and rear. Most of the serious recumbents now are using probably a 26 on the rear. But this is typical of the, you get a seat back that you can push against. You have pedals that are completely crank forward. And for people with back problems, these bikes completely eliminate your back. Since your back is in a reclined position, anybody with surgery or anything like any back problems at all, these kind of bikes usually solve your problems. I've owned a recumbent, back in about 1988. I bought my first recumbent, and it is a very comfortable position. The downsides of recumbents are you can't change position. You can slide forward and back in the seat a little bit, but you lose that very important standing position you get on a traditional bike, where you can stand, stretch out, and move around while you're on the bike. The other downside is this is, again, just like the crank forward bikes, this is a very biomechanically incorrect position for your body. This is using your hip flexors in a way that they were never designed to be used, and it's using angles of exertion on your legs that were never designed to be used too. So for some people, again, climbing steep hills with low cranking speeds will place your knees at a much higher stress level than a traditional bike. So anybody with weak knees will need to avoid steep hills. You'll need to keep your crank speed at a higher RPM of at least 90 to avoid any knee injuries if you have any propensity to weak knees. And of course, the choices in recumbents now are wide, including trikes. Here we have I think these are called there's two kinds of trikes now. One is the single wheel forward, and one is the single wheel back. One is called a Delta, and one is this is a cat trike, or people call these cat trikes, because you're actually steering with the two front wheels. From what I know, these bikes are more stable, and of course, your weight to the ground on this one is only about 6 to 8 inches off the ground. So stability-wise, this is probably safer than most Delta trikes, such as this one. This one uses 20-inch rears and 16-inch front tires to give you a lower center of gravity. But it's probably, if you took a very sharp turn, you would probably need to lean a little bit on these bikes to keep it upright. Of course, the upside on these is if you do fall over, it's a very short drop. So road rash is the only thing you're going to probably have to worry about, not broken bones. So that's one of the advantages of these low-slung recumbents. But the main disadvantage of it, and the reason I would never ride one on the road, is visibility. Even with a flag, you are below car level, so you can't see over the top of cars, which is a huge advantage on a conventional bike. So I would limit these to a bike trail only. Having these on an open road with car traffic passing you, I don't have enough courage for that. And along with the recumbents, we've had even more inventions, such as a side-by-side, which we haven't seen. At the turn of the century, they were making side-by-side tandems, but now there's a lot of choices in side-by-side tandems and what's called quads. And these bikes are especially fun because each rider gets to pedal at whatever crank speed they want. So you could have a rider that likes to pedal at 60 RPM and a rider that likes to pedal at 100 RPM, side by side and perfectly happy together. These bikes have a wider footprint, of course, on the road and take up more road. Now, I would say that's probably not more dangerous because taking up more road means you're at a higher visibility level than you would be as a single bike. So if you put a big old sign, a slow-moving vehicle sign or something on the back of one of these, it's probably perfectly safe on the road. The only downside is because they are so wide, if the shoulder is narrow, you can't get completely off the road and out of the way of traffic. But again, this is just more fun alternatives with all the choices of bikes we have. And the final picture here is a very unusual setup where we have a recumbent trike with a recumbent trike trailer attached, and making this a removable tandem. And again, with this bike setup, each rider pedals independently in any gear they choose. So these are really fun setups. We have a great bike trail system here where I live, and if I wanted to ride with somebody, these tandem alternatives are just wonderful. Just a wonderful way to travel. Wonderful way to ride bikes. And that's my top 10 for the day. Thanks for listening, and take care.